Alright, today we're going to talk about changes of state. Okay, so we're going to talk about solid, liquid, and gases. That's PS2C. We're also going to talk about PS7. You're going to investigate and understand temperature scales, heat, and thermal energy. And particularly today, it's 7B. Phase change, freezing point, melting point, boiling point, vaporization, and condensation. Those are the key terms we're going to focus in on today. So our essential question, which goes at the top, what happens when matter changes state? That's what we're looking at now. What happens when matter changes state? So at the very top, we're going to talk about what happens when substances change state, and the process by which a solid becomes a liquid we call melting. And I have a nice little chart here, so when we go from a solid to a liquid, it's melting. As the solid is heated up, the particles are going to gain energy, and we're going to vibrate faster, just like the kinetic theory of matter. And they're going to break up, as they go faster, they'll start to break loose and slide past one another. The process by which the temperature of a liquid is lowered is called freezing. So if I take a liquid and I take out energy, I remove the energy and the temperature goes lower, it's freezing. And in freezing, the temperature of a liquid is lowered and its particles are going to lose that energy, move more slowly, and that attraction becomes greater. They cause them to become a solid. They're still moving, but they're a solid. They're not moving as fast, and they can't slide past one another like a liquid. So water freezes at 0, but other substances can freeze either above or below that temperature. Like mercury, it's liquid at room temperature. Steel, it's solid at room temperature. Depending on what the properties of the different elements are, or the substance, it depends on the actual freezing points. But for water, it's 0 degrees Celsius. So when a substance loses or gains energy, one or two things can either happen. The temperature can change, or the state of matter can change. So let's take a look at this picture. Okay, we have this right here, and it's going to that. What state or what change of state is happening in this diagram? Okay, we have this, and we're going to that. Okay, to me, it looks more like a liquid because they're kind of sliding past one another, going to a gas because they're trying to get far apart. Okay, that's what I look at it as. I know some might look at it as a solid, but they're not in a fixed position. You can see how some are in front, some are on the side. To me, this would be a liquid going to a gas. So what happens when matter changes state? Continuing, a change in state of a substance from one form to another is a physical change. Okay, that's what we call it. Change in state is just a substance going from one physical form to matter to another. This, like I said, is a physical change. It doesn't change the identity. It's just the appearance. Instead of a solid, it's going to be a liquid. Instead of a liquid, it's going to be a gas. And if we keep adding energy, we can actually go up to a plasma, like we talked about last class. So what happens to substances changing states? To change a substance from one state to another, energy has to either be added or removed. Okay, so if I gain energy, I go from a solid to a liquid to a gas. If I remove energy, I go from a gas to a liquid to a solid. Okay, it's all about how fast those molecules are moving. Okay? You can see a solid very lined up, very rigid, right? The liquid is a little bit farther apart, spread apart, able to move around, and gases are really far apart. So all matter is made up of tiny particles we talked about last class, constant motion, and during that change in state, the motion of particles will change. They can break away from each other, they can either gain or more freedom to move, or they may attract and be strongly and have a little less freedom to move. So during these changes of state, substances will gain energy or lose energy. Okay. Alright, so how do solids and liquids change states? So let's take a look here. The change in a state in which a liquid becomes a solid is called freezing. We talked about that. Okay? And when liquids cool, particles have less energy, they slow down, they lock into fixed arrangements. The temperature at which a liquid changes into a solid is a freezing point. Okay? That was at 0 degrees Celsius we talked about earlier. Okay. Now you can warm a solid, the particles can get energy, the attraction will decrease, and they're going to eventually slide past one another. We call that melting, so make sure you write that down. The temperature at which a substance changes from a solid to a liquid is a melting point, that exact temperature. And for water, it's 0 and above, or above 0. Okay. How do liquids and gases change state? Continuing, this one we're going to talk about a liquid. So when a liquid keeps warming, it'll actually break the bonds over here and starts to evaporate. We talked about that before. So some particles will gain enough energy so they can escape the surface of the liquid and become a gas. This is called evaporation. So because water's attracted to other water molecules. Once they get enough energy, they can kind of escape, and they don't really attract to the other water molecules. That's evaporation. Okay, if I do it fast, the rapid change from a liquid to a gas or a vapor is called boiling. So when you're boiling a pot of water, that's a rapid change. This happens at 100 degrees Celsius. So how is evaporation different than boiling? So let's take a look here. This one is evaporation because it's coming off the surface. So evaporation is when water molecules change from a liquid to a gas from the surface. Boiling would be all over. Okay, you see the little bubbles coming up, and the gas, water vapor trying to bubble up to the surface there. Okay, now if a gas is cooled, it's going to lose energy, and those attractions will get stronger, and the speed of their motion will get a little slower, and this is called condensation. So when you go from a gas to a liquid, it's condensation. Okay. So here we go. What's happening to the water particles in each image? Well, here the water particles are going to cool down, right? They're going to slow down. Here the water particles are evaporating, boiling, right? So that's a rapid change. And here they're just evaporating. Okay. All right. So when matter changes from one state to another, its physical changes, but the chemical identity will not. So that's a big, important factor there. Now, you cannot change the identity of the substance just by changing the state. Okay. So a change of state, the energy of the particles, their movement, and their distance between them will change, though. Okay. So if you keep adding energy, they're going to move faster, and they're going to get farther apart. You take energy away, they're going to go slower, and they're going to move closer together. Okay. Okay. Make sure that you complete the summary on the back after your test. And include all the vocabulary: evaporation, freezing, condensation, boiling point, melting point, and phase change. Be ready for the next lab, next class.